Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Welcome everybody to Tiger Claw Radio. This is your host, Critical Failure. Yes, friends, it is that time. Terribly sorry about last week. Feels so good to be back on the air, talking about games. Gonna listen to some chiptunes. Got a fan cast. Got some stuff in the fail bag. It's gonna be a good time. Speaking of chiptunes, as you know, we've been walking through the top 40 chiptunes from the 8-Bit Collective archive. Hemrock picked out after listening to I don't know how many MP3s, but at least 1,000. A lot. How many? I don't know. But we're at 36. Track 36. And track 36 is a big one for me because it's one of only 2 on this list that I remember from back in the day. This is from Dandruff. That was the guy's name. And it's called Miss You, Mr. Mouse. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Stick with us. The guy who made that, Dandruff, was not a big-time chiptune name. He had a handful of tracks, like maybe 3 on the 8-Bit Collective, and then disappeared. Either disappeared or changed his name, so we can't track where he went from there. So at the time he was working, he had done a series of tracks around this Mr. Mouse character. Miss You, Mr. Mouse, and there was one about like Mr. Mouse goes to space or something like that. But that particular track was one I enjoyed very much. I had it as a ringtone on my flip phone, which back in those days, if you wanted to set up a ringtone on your flip phone, it was much more complex because they wanted you to buy ringtones. That was how they wanted it to go down in those days, the phone companies. So you had to cut it down to a short MP3, and then you had to email it to your phone number somehow. I say somehow because I can't remember exactly how to do it. And then it would show up, and if you were lucky, you could download it to your phone and then use it as a ringtone. That was one I went through all that with. So whenever my wife would call, that was her particular ringtone. Miss You, Mr. Mouse from Dandruff. Excellent, excellent track. Nice to see that one on the top 40. So to kick things off here on TCR, I've got a vancast that I recorded recently, and it's a pretty long one as far as vancasts go. It runs about 17 minutes, but I was shooting pretty hard on this one, so I felt like it never got rambly, and we went some good places. So we're gonna go there now. You're listening to TCR. Let's go to the van. Captain's log. Stardate December 1st, 2022. It is, that is my wife's car, 9:09 p.m., 33 degrees outside. So this is the first taste of, it's a little chilly out there. A little chilly, hombre, just a little brisk. Which I like. This was the first time all season I stepped outside in my flip-flops and socks. I didn't have my coat on, and I was like, you know what? I think I have to put on real shoes. This is real shoe weather. Flip-flops, they ain't cutting it here, Jack. So tonight's mission involves 2 stops. Number 1, we're going to get gas in my wife's car. She's a Tupperware consultant. She's got a big vendor event that she's going to this weekend. That's like, I don't know, an hour away or something. So I'm going to fill her gas up for her, because I'm just that kind of guy. After that, I headed over to Chipotle, getting the din-din. Now that the kids, the screaming kids are in the bed, and we're going to watch some television of some kind. So what on earth happened last week? I'll go into detail later, because I know this is going to air early in the show, but yeah, it's pretty crazy. It was banging on the walls, and it finally got quiet enough for me to do some stuff, and my wife was sick, so I had to take care of her, and then when she was better enough to handle things, then they were banging again. Oh, it's crazy. But here we are. Okay, so that said, that means there's been a couple of weeks since we've done one of these. Some things have happened. All right. So Black Friday came and went, and I usually don't get anything on Black Friday, but it just so happened that because the sickness was rolling through my house, my wife went to bed very early that night. So so here I was. So there I was. It was just me and my cell phone in the quiet in my bed, doing dumb things, looking on the internet as men often do. And it was Black Friday, and I was looking on Amazon, and I was flipping around, and I bought a set-top box. Now, you might remember a year and a half, maybe even 2 years ago, I bought an Android box, a little set-top box that would run, it ran VLC, it ran a couple of simple emulators. Not much to it, but it was a cheap little box, and believe it or not, I got a heck of a lot of mileage out of that little thing. You get one of these boxes for like $50 or so, or less. And this thing went on every vacation with us, because if we ever ended up in a hotel room that didn't have any internet, or wanted to charge people for the movies or do anything like that, no. We'll plug this thing in and we're good to go. Now, I know there's better ways to do it, but you threw this thing in a little bag with a controller, and then you had family movies, and then you could also play some simple games or whatever. Well, I bought another one, but this time, instead of an Android box, this little guy runs Windows 10. Hey! Specs are not great, as you could probably imagine. I don't have them in front of me, but it's a dual-core processor. A dually! And not the good kind. Dual-core processor with DDR3 RAM. 4 gigs of RAM, I think. But what's nice about it is it actually has a nice little hard drive. It was like, I don't remember exactly what the number is, but once you turn it on, you clear about 100 gigs. That's after whatever it takes to store the operating system. All right, I'm at the gas station. Give me a second to fill her up. Are we fueling? We are fueling up. Okay, so we got a minute while that fills. Right, so this little set-top box, and I got it on the network at home, and I put Steam on it, which is great, because even my cheap little laptop, I've got a cheap laptop that I got, I think, last year around this time, that, is similar in power, a little bit more powerful, but was like $100-$200, something like that. Even that thing, I had to put in an SD card to really start installing stuff. This, 100 gigs, that's not a lot, but it'll get you going. I got Steam going, and I went through my entire library on Steam, which is no small task. Picked out a collection of like low-spec games that were controller compatible, because I was thinking, hey, I'll have this thing run Steam. Steam launches when Windows starts, and Steam launches into big picture mode, which is hilarious, because how long have I been using Steam? 11 years, 12 years? I've never wanted Steam to launch when Windows launches. Never. And even less have I wanted it to launch into big picture mode. And I've always been like, why would somebody do that? Well, now there's a good reason. So, low spec machine. Past several nights, I've been having fun with my oldest son. He's been playing Cuphead, and since we have it on this little box, you know, imagine it's a little tiny box that, oh, by the way, one part I left out. I hooked it up to my TV, and I have a really long HDMI cable. So it's not like sitting on the TV top. I have it like, so I have my two chairs that in front of the TV, and this little box sits between the two chairs. Oh, was that the gas? That's the gas. Give me 1 second here. And it sits between these two chairs, and the idea is the box has 4 USB ports on it, and that way we don't have to mess with wireless controllers. Now, I've got a couple controllers that are wireless, but wireless always seems to introduce just a wee little bit of input lag. You know, and maybe it's just my head playing tricks with me. I know it does. The wee little bit. To the point where even if it's working properly, I can't stop thinking about it. So I like the wired controllers. So this little thing sits between the two chairs, and you can hook anything in the world up to it and sit leisurely in your chair and play Steam games. It's pretty great. My boy and I have been playing Cuphead, and I was able to load onto it. I wish I had a number, but it was a large number. How much of the hard drive did I use? I used half of the hard drive. So 50 gigabytes of Steam games. Woo! That was my lane, buddy. That's all right. As long as we're not crashing, I guess we're okay. So I loaded it down with games and play Cuphead with my boy. And when it's just me, what I've been doing is just running through and running the games one at a time to try and get that, you know, first time launching sequence. And it's been really great. I'm kind of shocked that Cuphead works. I also got to play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD on it. You know, the version of Tony Hawk that when they rebuilt it in the Unreal Engine, you know, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. It's gone from the market now, but that plays just fine, which is an absolute shock, because I figured nothing that renders in 3D is even going to be worth trying. But that worked. And then likewise, this evening I tried River City Ransom, or River City Melee Mock, a River City Battle Royale Special. You know, both of those games. The game ran okay, but in the menu for some reason it was like massive slowdown. So it's weird, like certain like 2D games, depending on how they're optimized, you know, and what engine they're running, that sort of stuff, work or don't work, and some 3D games do, I guess. I don't know. That's kind of a shocker. But we got to play Cuphead. And there's another game called Particle Mace that works very, very well. I'm really excited about. Particle Mace is one of those games. Years ago at MagFest, I say years ago, I guess it has been years now. Particle Mace always had an arcade cabinet at MagFest with, you know, 4 joysticks at it that you could walk up to and do multiplayer. So, great party game, perfect game to work on this little box. So that's been really cool. I've been enjoying that. Hang on just a second. All right. Bear with me here. But that's a piece of hardware. As it relates to software, we had the Thanksgiving sale that came and went, and I got a couple of things, but nothing really of note, nothing that I can go too into depth about here. That's my wife texting me. Like, I found, this was kind of shocking, I found a program available on Steam for creating text adventures, which I won't dwell on because I know it's going to put everybody to sleep. But that was shocking. It was a little expensive at $30, and then it was on sale down to like $24 or something. So I paid a lot for that thing. And I got a couple other small games, but that's the only thing that sticks out off the top of my head right now. Hang on. And what was it I played today? I played something today for the first time, but now I can't remember what it was. All right, I'm at the place. Let me get the food, and then we'll see if I can remember in the meantime. One sec. All right, how we doing? We got the food. I got a gorgeous burrito. And now I just gotta escape this crazy parking lot with my life. All right. Thank you. All right. I remember what game it was. We're talking about Rise of the Triad. So I was cruising around Steam today, and I saw in the upcoming releases, Rise of the Triad, the original Rise of the Triad, is getting an HD release. Or at least a modern re-release. And I was super excited about that, which is a little weird because I have Rise of the Triad in my Steam collection 3 times over. Way back when they had the Apogee collection, the great big one, it was in there, so you could get Rise of the Triad from there. And then there's also something called the Apogee Throwback Pack, which predates that old Apogee collection that's not around anymore. And the Throwback Pack only has 4 games in it. It has Rise of the Triad, something called Rise of the Triad Extreme, which is like an expansion pack, but an official one. And then there's 2 different Blakestone games. And then the third game that I have is the 2013 Rise of the Triad remake game, where they remade it in the Unreal Engine. Is kind of weird. So that was the game that I tried. I'm excited about this new HD remake because I always wanted to play Rise of the Triad multiplayer, and I'm hoping it's going to be like the Blood remake that came out last year, where they made Blood work the way it's supposed to, so you can play that online. And then when that came out, for like a short period of time, you could launch it and then jump right into a multiplayer game. You know, jumping right into the multiplayer of a build engine game. It seems unheard of, but it was a thing for a little while, for like a week or so. So when Rise of the Triad comes out, you better believe this is a day one purchase for me, because that had a multiplayer match where it was like you go around collecting coins and stuff, but this was like, you know, back in the, you know, dial-up days. So multiplayer in those days for me wasn't really, you know, an option. It's too complicated. But you could launch multiplayer like locally and then just test it out and see how it worked. So I did that a bunch. And I remember later in life, I think this is with Jungle Rat Rob from the Retro League, formerly of the Retro League. He and I, one night, tried to play Rise of the Triad. And it's a funny thing because I only ever played games with Jungle Rat Rob maybe once, maybe twice. But I remember trying Rise of the Triad and it not working and being really disappointed. So this would be really cool to get this new game. So in celebration, I dug out the weird remake and I said, hey, this has been in my collection for almost 10 years and I don't remember ever playing it. It's weird because it had 30 minutes in it and I did have a couple of the achievements, but I don't remember getting them. I don't know. So I played this old Rise of the Triad game and it was pretty weird. I don't know. It's in the Unreal Engine. It's nice and smooth. It's a fun game. I don't think it quite has the charm of the OG Rise of the Triad. I don't know. I think something happens when you go from the 2D sprites and 2.5D world to like a nice smooth 3D world. It kind of loses a little bit there. But that's just me. But it's a fun little game. And another thing about it that I think is worth mentioning is over on Twitter. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head because I'm in the car. But one of these old head Apogee guys who has a name that's worth knowing, that I should know, has been making tweets, you know, about old Apogee stuff. And he announced, hey, we got a new Rise of the Triad coming out. And somebody said, was this there or was this on the Steam conversation? I don't know. But somebody said, hey, what about remaking the 2013 version? And his response was, that game is such a mess, or that project is such a mess, we'd be better off just remaking it from scratch. And that is a bold, telling statement from a studio insider. So I read that before I launched the game. So then when I finally sat down to play it, I kind of looked at it in a different light. It's like, all right, this makes sense. This must have been, a development train wreck. All right, so considering, taking that into consideration, what I actually got to sit down and play was very enjoyable. And then I went back to the Apogee Throwback Pack, and I launched Rise of the Triad Dark War. Not Dark War. That's the original game. Rise of the Triad Extreme or something like. I think that's what it's called. I forget now. But the one that's like the expansion, I launched that and started playing it because it has the original engine, and that was great. That was a lot of fun. I recommend that wholeheartedly. So that is another, old FPS that's going to drop. Will be fun for a little while, and then fade away into the proverbial cornfield. That is my Steam collection. Just like Ray Liotta walking into the corn in Field of Dreams. Yeah, but Rise of the Triad's a fun game. If you've never played it, it was a really weird time for FPSs. It was when FPSs were still being called Doom clones. Yeah, I enjoy it. It's a little wonky. Hang on a second, I gotta park. And I think that wraps it up, because I got the food, and now I'm back home, and I'm gonna go eat with my wife and watch some television. So I'll see you guys back in the studio. Back again in the studio. We're going to listen to track number 35 in the Top 40 8-Bit Collective. But before we do that, let's just take a quick minute and thank the sponsors. This is a Patreon-sponsored program. EmeraldRangers.com are the ones who made the deal to put us back on the air. EmeraldRangers.com, also Hemrock and Tecmo Balls. Thank you very much for supporting and keeping us around. I hope you're enjoying the party. All right, and with that, this is called Scissor Mountain. You're listening to TCR. Back again in the studio. So I got a Thumby. You remember the Thumby? We talked about that, I think when the Kickstarter was still happening, and I ordered one. The unboxing was on my YouTube channel, so you can check that out if you haven't seen it. But I popped it open and I played it for a little bit, and yeah, it's a fun little thing. I mean, I don't know, people. There was a lot of like weird, this is unplayable, because it wasn't designed to be an awesome game system. It was designed to be, okay, how small can we make this? But, you know, they also made an open platform that you can program for. So I got myself one, and I've been playing Thumbjin, and it's been a neat little, you know, thing. I don't have a whole lot to say about it, so we're going to come back to it after I've had it for a couple of weeks. But yeah, I got the Thumby. I was nice to see it show up in Amazon as a real product that really came out. Because you know how when it comes to Kickstarter, something being on Kickstarter or something even being successfully funded on Kickstarter does not necessarily mean it's a real product. Thumby, for better or for worse, is a real thing. So my hat is off to them for that. My interest in it was not so much because, you know, I want to play the teeny tiny little games. No, I like the idea of an open platform that you can develop for it. It was the same reason I was interested in the Ouya, because that's how they you know, marketed themselves, and it turned out to not really be the case. But another, yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Another one that's similar is the Arduboy, which came out a couple years back. I don't know, but it was. I think Mecha Menace was the one who told me about the Arduboy, and I just looked it up, and it's you can get it again. It was off the market, like they were all sold out and they were gone, but now it's a thing again, which is really cool. And what I like is that the Arduboy has a working core on RetroArch. So if you were to make a game for that thing, that game could also be played on an Anbernic or a Powkitty or something that runs RetroArch, and thus that little thing becomes like a viable place to develop games. That's what I'm hoping the Thumby gets. You know, it's a silly little tiny thing, but maybe the RetroArch developers can make a core that interprets those games. And then I can make stupid little Thumby games that can also go to, you know, retro handheld owners. Because what I would like to see happen is I want to see those handheld devices like the Anbernics and the Powkitties. I want to see those get away from ROMs. Like the old, you know, NES library, SNES library, the games that people have been playing for decades. Nothing against those games, but right now those emulation handhelds are still considered piracy devices, and they don't have to be. I think there's a future there. So the Thumby, stupid as it sounds, and as much as it's an enormous inferential leap, that could be another, you know, nail in that proverbial clubhouse. Is making games for anything that's open platform. You know, it could happen. I even looked up. I was sniffing around about the Playdate recently, because that was, you know, it was a weird thing that kind of, you know, people kind of scoffed at. It was very expensive. It's $200, and the back order was, you know, absurd. But now, you know, the date they said they're going to ship is early 2023. That's a month away. You know, I don't have a date, but, you know, that's we're now in the realm of something that could happen. The problem with the Playdate is they put that stupid little crank there, which is a fun little gimmick, but that makes it very hard for those games to be put on any other device. So yeah, they have an open platform. Yes, anybody can develop for their platform. And yes, you can actually sell your games for the Playdate, which, by the way, I think is awesome of them. But I don't know. I think it would become more difficult to make a RetroArch core for the Playdate. Not impossible, but they'd have to put a little bit more work into it. Who knows? We'll see. I went back and forth. I don't think I'm getting a Playdate. I think I'm as close as you're going to get to the core audience for a Playdate. I don't think I'm going to get one. All right, boys and girls. That said, you know what time it is.
It's time
for the fail bag.
Yes, friends, this is the fantabulous form of entertainment we call the fail bag. Your questions, comments, anything you want to have read on the air, just reach out to me, let me know who you are, what you got going on, and we'll see what we can do. We turn our attention, boys and girls, over to YouTube, where we have comments for the past couple of weeks that have not been read. All right, so let me bring up the studio here, and we start with Muragaru 553. He says, I love these dives into music like the 8-Bit Collective. Reminds me of the ancient days, early mid-aughts. Looking for old doujinshi music like SSH. Fun times. First tune makes me think of Ninja Turtles in a way. I can never throw down money for the Atari collection. Just could never get into those kinds of games. Picking up a sports game every handful of years is the way to go. Like you said, they're pretty much the same year in, year out. Not terrible, just enough to warrant buying it every year. Just not enough to warrant buying it every year. I don't know if that reimagining thing for $30, it seems a bit much. I want to get Tactics Ogre, but I still need to get into Diofield Chronicles. I played the remakes on PSP, which was nice. I've heard they gave it a lot of tender love and care and added tons of info, like the jukebox music selection portion. Credits all the people who made different versions of the songs, as well as composer notes. I always get the short end of things. Jeez, I screwed that up. Let's read that again. Thieves always get the short end of things. There we go. Number 39 makes me think of an NES platformer or an Icetown theme. Yeah, I would say so. The Harvest Moon stuff never really interested me. It just reminds me of all the random chores I had to do as a kid. Haha. Thanks for the episode and enjoy your Thanksgiving. Thanks, man. Hope you're doing well. Mecha Menace responded with, I love the SSH remixes of Thunder Force 4-1. I'm probably not picking up the Atari 50-pack either, but this is more like an old-school DVD release filled to the brim with presentation, documentaries, new release games, graphics, remixes, from what I can tell with the trailer. I would not describe it as simply collection. I think that's what Digital Eclipse is increasingly being recognized. The dev that creates beautiful, nostalgic game packages. I would say so. And they have a bit of a back and forth for a couple messages after that between Muragaru and Mecha Menace. But I'd say his statement is fair. Mecha Menace leaves his own response that says, CD Man was the Pac-Man of limited choice for me back in the day. It has themed mazes such as castles and EGA, colorful Pirate Bay. I bought it as a 3.5 disc from one of those spinner racks at the grocery store. I've mentioned these racks before in my vids, and I assume people knew what I was talking about, as they would have seen them in their grocery stores across the USA while growing up. Is that true? Did you see these racks full of wafer-thin packages, some with screenshots? If so, what are some of the discs... Woo! What are some of the discs you picked up off of those racks? This one I'd been waiting to read. Okay, Mac. I don't suppose you have any photos of those racks in your archives. Because yes, I saw one of these one time. It was not at a grocery store. It was at a place called Egghead Software. Now, back in those days, we had our local Staples where you'd go to for, Rolodexes and things like that. Because those were still used back then. And inside the Staples, way in the back, was a little subsection called Egghead Software. And this closed. I don't know exactly when it closed, but I only remember going in there once or twice with my dad. So it would have been before 1997. And one time going into Egghead Software, they had a spinner rack, which I remember looking at, and I wish I could remember what was available there. But all I can remember is that we bought a floppy disk copy of Hugo 3, Hugo's House of Horrors Part 3, the one where he gets lost in the jungle. And that was exactly like you're describing. It was like a blister pack, but paper thin, and it just had the 3x5 disc in it, and that was it. So we got that from one of those, and then later on, my dad bought Doom, the shareware version of Doom, from one of those. And that's all I can remember. But the thing that makes the Hugo one special is that I was present that day, and I got to look through the rack and pick a game out. But what sucks is I only remember Hugo 3. I don't remember what I picked it out over, and I dearly wish that I did. So that's like a weird hole in my memory, is the spinner rack. I know they exist because there was one at Egghead Software, but I don't ever remember having them like at our local grocery stores. That might have been a regional thing. But yeah, thank you for that. Let's see. Cyber Brickmaster 1986 says, there's no Thanksgiving in Australia. That's true. Thanksgiving is an American holiday, but I would like to expand that to be that no one in Australia is thankful for anything. So that gets a thumbs up. Clickety Clack says, the best hair on YouTube hidden under a Eurotrack Simulator 2 hat. CF Bros, I don't feel so good. Clickety Clack, by the way, that is a familiar sounding name. I think that might be one of our friends, one of our normal commenting friends, under an alternate account, but that might just be me. And we got a couple comments on the Thumby unboxing. Mekameta says, quoting me at 2.5 minutes in, it's pretty bad, don't get me wrong. Yeah, and the reason I mentioned that was because everybody who unboxes the Thumby and messes with it for the first time kind of has this reaction where it's like, oh, well, this is clearly unplayable. I don't know what we're going to do with that. And it is playable. It doesn't feel great, but it does work. So, yeah, that's what I said. He says, this reminds me of the early 2000s when phones kept getting thinner and smaller. Eventually, they were skits on comedy shows where someone using a phone would be the size of your thumb. Yeah, I'd say that's about accurate. Your RNG QTE game or something like an interactive screensaver probably would work well. Complicated action platforming doesn't seem realistic. Yeah, I would agree. Desmond 101 says, wow, that's crazy small. Pretty interesting little device. Yeah, I haven't put anything on it apart from what comes on it. I've just been enjoying the Soar Run or Dino Run clone. And the roguelike Thumbjin is pretty good. But supposedly there's a working Pokemon game for it somewhere. But I don't know. Yeah, so that is the fail bag for this week. How we doing? 37 minutes in? And that, boys and girls, is TCR for another week. Big thanks to everybody who hung on while I took off last week. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Christmas is just around the corner. And I hope that you're enjoying this holiday season. Whatever it is you're dealing with, keep at it. I'm wishing you all the best in the world. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next week.